Begin today on Daf Kuf Beis Amud Beis, starting the new Pedic, Beis Kor, the seventh Pedic of Masechta Bava Basra. Sagt the Heilige Mishnah, Ha'emel la'chaveira, a person says to his friend, Beis Kor Ofar ani moichelach. I'm selling you a piece of land which is a Beis Kor Ofar. This is a Beis Kor Ofar, which is in a big piece of land, and he's selling him this Beis Kor Ofar, and now the Mishnah here will say what the condition of this piece of land has to be in order for it to meet the criteria of being that land of a Beis Kor Ofar. Now the shear of this Beis Kor Ofar, a Beis Kor is 30 saw, and 30 saw is 50 amas by 50 amas. It comes out to be that in a Beis Kor Ofar you have 75,000 amas. That's the shear that the Rambam says, and the Rashbam says here that the source of this concept of the Beis Kor is in the Lashon of the Pasuk, and it's learned from the Mishkan, which was 50 by 100 amas. Okay, so over here he's selling him and he's using this expression, Beis Kor Ofar. Now, if in this Beis Kor there are ditches, and these ditches are deep 10 tvachim, or there are rocks in this Beis Kor that are gvayin yud tvachim. And the protrusion of the rocks is high enough that it's 10 tvachim high. So then, einon nimdaden ima. It's not measured together with the piece of land. So he's going to have to give him a different piece of the land that does not have these ditches or these protrusions of rocks. The Rashbam here adds that we're talking about Ninikayim, for example, the ditches that are 10 tvachim deep, but the Mishnah does not say any width of how wide these ditches are. It has to be at least 4 tvachim wide in order for it to be significant that it's not part of the piece of land here. Pachas mikan. However, if there are any ditches in this land that are, or any protrusions of rocks in this land that are less than this amount of 10 tvachim, nimdaden ima. It is measured together with the territory, and it qualifies to be this Beis Kor Ofar. Now, if, however, the seller says Kibbeis Kor Ofar, he just adds one letter, Kibbeis. I'm selling you an area that's like a Beis Kor Ofar. So why is he saying Kibbeis Kor Ofar? So then I say, even if it has ditches that are deeper than 10 tvachim, or it has rocks that are protrusions higher than 10 tvachim, it's measured together with the land. That's why he said kibbeis. It's not going to be exactly one Beis Kor, even if it has ditches in it. It's also part of the sale. The Rashbam here says that the Mishnah in both cases says that the Lashon is Beis Kor Ofar. He adds the word Ofar. And so the Rashbam says if you just said Beis Kor without Ofar, so then even if it has all these ditches, it's going to be a good sale. It's only because he added Ofar. Ofar means that it should be good earth, a place where to plant. Then you say that if there are ditches that separate one part from another part of this land, then it's not going to be a good sale. That's the Rashbam's pshat here. Okay, now the Gemara here is going to begin with a Mishnah in Masechta Erechin, I think, where it brings a halacha regarding when a person is makdish, a piece of territory, and there it speaks about a similar kind of case where there's ditches or rocks in the field, and then the Gemara is going to apply from what we see there back to the pshat in our Mishnah. Tanan Hasam, so we learned there in our Mishnah, Hamakdish Sadeyu B'Shas HaYovel. A person that dedicates his field for hektish, and B'Shas HaYovel here means in the time period when Yovel was still Noyeg, when there was still Yovel. This is in the time of the first Beis Hamikdash. Shas Yovel doesn't mean on Yovel itself. It just means in the time period when there still was Yovel. So now what's the halacha when a person dedicates to hektish a property that's called a stei achuzah? Not a property that he bought, but a property that he inherited. Over here, when you come to redeem it from hektish, you don't pay its value. There's a certain set amount that it says in the Torah, and that is that you pay for a zera chaymer sa'irim, which is the chaymer in the language of the pasuk means a Beis Kor. You have to pay 50 shekel kesef. That's what the pasuk says. Okay, for the amount of years that it's being sold. It could be sold only for 49 years, or you could be makdish at the hektish, that is, only for 49 years. And for those 49 years, you can be makdish at the hektish, and if you want to redeem it, it has to be 50 shekel kesef. Okay, so now, again, the Mishnah says, Hamakdish Sadeh B'Shas HaYovel, in the time when Yovel still applies, so then you redeem it in this set amount, not by its value. Now, hayusham nekayim amukim yutvachim. If this piece of land that you will makdish to hektish has in it these ditches that are 10 tvachim deep, by slime gevayim yutvachim, or rocks that are protrusions that are 10 tvachim high, then ein imdadim ima, they will not be counted and measured together with the rest of the territory. And therefore the halacha in this case will be that for those ditches, when they are redeemed from hektish, they're not redeemed according to this measurement that the Torah says that it's a set amount of 50 coins, 50 shekel kesef for a kor, but they are redeemed according to their value, not according to this share that the Torah says. And the Gemara is soon going to explain. Even though they're not part of the field, because they're ditches that are deep enough and it's not part of the field, but it's still a stei achuzah. It still is a piece of a territory that's an inheritance that you're dedicating to hektish. But nevertheless, they are not to be redeemed according to the sheer Torah. The Torah says in such a case, but they're redeemed according to their value.
So they're going to have to pay less.
Could be, yeah. Now, so the Gemara asks on this, right here, the Gemara asks the question. Second one, first one more thing. The Mishnah there says, Pachas mikan. However, if these ditches or the rocks that are in the field are less than this amount, meaning it's not 10 tvachim deep or it's not 10 tvachim high, nimdadam ima, then it is measured, then it is counted as part of the field itself, and you have to redeem it according to the shir that the Torah says, Zera Chayim Yisayrim. Sorry. Okay. So now the Gemara explains this here. Why are we saying that if there's a protrusion or a ditch that's in the field that's more than 10 tvachim, why are we saying that it doesn't get redeemed according to the shear that the Torah says? You have to redeem it according to its value. Let it be redeemed. True, it's not part of the whole territory because it's steep enough that it could be seen as a separate field, but it should be hektish separately itself. And it should also be redeemed according to this shear that the Torah says that for a kor, the amount of 50 coins for the 49 years of Til Shmita, or Til Yovel rather. Why are we saying that it has to be redeemed for its value? The Rashbam here points out that don't think to say that if you, similar to what we said before in our Mishnah, that if you're selling a field and it has these ditches, so then it's a problem in the whole sale itself. So maybe we should say over here as well, that if you're makdish and inside this field that you dedicated to hektish, you have these ditches, so maybe those areas that are inside the ditches are not even included to be part of the hektish, because it's like a separate field. So the Rashbam says, no, it doesn't work that way. He brings from a Mishnah that we learned earlier in the Masechta, that when you're makdish, then we say a person is makdish ba'ayin yafe, and it is included in the sale. It is included in the hektish, that is. So that's what we learned earlier in the Masechta. But the question over here is, even though it's included as part of the hektish, but why do we say that it is going to be redeemed according to its value, and not in the shear that the Torah says, which is Zera Chayim Yisayrim? Now, if you'll argue and say, Kivin Lehava Beis Kor Leikochi, then maybe we should say that when you're makdish an area that's less than the size of a Beis Kor, the hektish doesn't take effect. Maybe there's such a kind of halacha. So the Gemara says, no, that's not the case. Because Vatanya, we learned in Abraisa, Sodeh, when it says in the Torah this word, Sodeh. Ma Talmud Loima, why does it have to say this extra word of Sodeh? Because the pasuk says that when you have an area that's the size of Chayim Yisayrim, a base core, you redeem it for 50 shekel kesef. So I would say only if you were makdish that amount. How do I know that this applies also if you were makdish less? Lesech, a lesech is a half a kor, which is 15 sa, chatzi lesech, a half a lesech, or a sa'ah, if you were makdish only one sa'ah, or a tarkev, which is 3 kav, or a chatzi tarkev, a kav and a half. How do you know that in all these cases the hektish takes effect, and the halacha of redeeming it zera chayim yisayrim accordingly, according to the size that it is? How do you know that it takes effect as well? Talmud loymar hasada. There's an extra word that it says in the pasuk there, hasada, that says that this is also included to be hektish, and the same halacha of redeeming zera chayim yisayrim applies. B'kol makan, even if it's a smaller size. So Amar Rav Ukve bar Chama. Rav Ukve bar Chama answered this question and explained, what is this Mishnah they're speaking about when it says that the ditches are not included in the same part of the hektish of the rest of the field, and you don't redeem it according to zera chayim yisayrim, but you redeem it by its value? Hacha b'nekayim b'leim mayim askino. We're speaking about ditches in this field that are full of water. Because they're full of water, the lav b'nei zriyaninu. they can't be planted at all. So therefore it's not zera chaymes item. The halacha of redeeming, according to this shear, the Torah says, is only a piece of land that could be planted, but not if it's full of water. They kanami, I'll prove to you that this is the pshat of the Mishnah there. Diktani dum yedeslayim, because the Mishnah there gives two examples, ditches and rocks. Why does it have to give the other example of rocks? It's coming to say that it's similar to rocks. Just like the rocks are rocks that can't be planted at all, and therefore it's not part of the field, and therefore when those rocks are also hektish, but they have to be redeemed by their value, not by zera chaymes sayrim. So too, regarding the ditches, it's the same thing, that they're similar to rocks, that they're full of water and therefore can't be planted. Shma mino. So we see that that's the pshat here, that it's full of water. If that's the case, if you're talking about ditches that are full of water, so why is the Mishnah making a distinction whether it's 10 tvachim deep or it's less than 10 tvachim deep? Even if it's less than 10 tvachim deep, we should say the same thing. If it's full of water and you can't plant it, so why is it part of the field? If the Torah says that only zera, chaymes item, where you could plant, you redeem it with this shear, but if it's full of water, why should it matter whether it's full of, if it's 10 tvachim deep or not? Answers the Gemara, no, there's a difference. Hano, if it's less than 10 tvachim deep, then I say, nagani da'ara mikro. This is referred to as the... Nagani da'ara means it's like a crack or a split in the field itself. It's part of the makeup of the field itself. You can't have any territory usually that's totally flat. So it goes a little up, a little down. It's part of the terrain. It has a little bit of a crack in it, but it's considered to be part and parcel of the field itself, even if it's full of water. Or shadri da'ara mikro. Or if you have protrusions of rocks that are less than 10 tfachim, this is also part of the protrusions of the field itself. It's not considered to be, it's just like a little mound, a little area in the field itself. It's not a separate part of the field, and therefore it's still included in the shear that the Torah says, zera chaymer sayrim, part of the field itself. Okay, this is the pshat in the Mishnah in Masechta Erechim. So over there, because it says both of these examples, ditches and rocks, we compare them and we say that we're talking about ditches that are full of water, and that's the reason why, in the case where it's more than 10 tfachim, it won't be part of the field. So now the Gemara comes back to our Mishnah.
If the ditches are able to plant,
yeah, meaning that it's not full of water. If it's not full of water and you're able to plant them, then
why do they say it's not counted?
It is. No, then it is part of the field. Then, in a case where it's not full of water, but now the Gemara is explaining that this that Rav Ukva Bar Chama is explaining this, that it says there in the Mishnah that the ditches are not counted together with the field, and it's not redeemed with the shear of the Torah zera chaymes sayrim. That's only because it's full of water. If it wasn't full of water and you could plant there, so then it will be redeemed with the shear of the Torah zera chaymes sayrim.
The same thing by Kinyan?
So now the Gemara is going to ask whether we say similar regarding the pshat of our Mishnah. So the Gemara, what's the pshat over here in our Mishnah? The reason the Gemara is asking a shaila is because in our Mishnah you could make the same diuk as we say there in the Mishnah in Erechim. Because in our Mishnah it also mentions two examples, ditches and slime and rocks. So should we say that the ditches in our Mishnah also similar to rocks, meaning it's an area that cannot be planted at all because it's full of water? Or maybe not. Maybe by a sale, when there are ditches, it's different. Even without water, it's a problem that the buyer says it's not what I wanted to buy. I didn't want to have these ditches here in this field. Rav Papa says a sale is different. You can't compare to when a person is makdish as de'achuzah. Even if these ditches are not full of water, still, if he says, I'm selling you a base core offer, the ditches there, which creates a separation, like a hefsek, like a interruption in the field, it's not going to be a sale of a proper base core offer. And the Gemara explains the reason. My time, because a buyer doesn't want he's paying money for one area, for one field where he wants to be able to plant it all together. And what does he see? It's sort of like 2 or 3 different lands. You have an area, and then you have this big ditch, which is 10 tvachim deep, and then another land, and then another ditch. The ditch creates a separation in the field that now it's a tircha for him, that he has to go and plant like separate fields. He's paying for one field to plant. Therefore, over here, regarding planting, a ditch 10 tvachim deep separates it, and therefore, even without water inside there, it's not a good base core offer.
If you don't like the house, go buy it.
Okay, but he didn't see it. The seller he didn't see what he was buying. The seller tells him, here, you see I have this massive territory here. I'm giving you a base court offer out of this area. And now you come look in the area. There are certain parts of this massive territory that if you want to take this area of base court offer, it has ditches in it. So he has to give him another section of this big territory, which should be a base court offer without any ditches in it. Maskif Ravina, so Ravina asks on this pshat, but vadum yidislayim ketani. Why don't we say the same diak that we said before in the Mishnah of Erchin? Since it mentions here the two examples of ditches and racks, why shouldn't we say that it's similar to racks, which is an area that cannot be planted at all, and therefore the ditches as well means an area that's full of water that can't be planted at all. Maslayim lav nezrininu, afhanin lav nezrininu. Answers the Gemara, no, it's not the same thing, because kikatani dum yidislayim. Over here, in our case, when it says the example of racks, why is it giving this example of racks? Apochis mikan. It's only saying this regarding the Seifa of the Mishnah. Or regarding not the Seifa, but regarding the example where you have ditches or racks that are less than 10 tfachim. In a case where it's less than 10 tfachim, over here we said that it is considered to be part of the base court offer. And on that the Chiddush is, when you have ditches in a field that are less than 10 tfachim, it's going to be considered a good sale, and it's part of the field, even if it's full of water. That's why it says dum yidislayim. That even if it's similar to racks, that it's not part of the field because you can't even plant there. It's full of water, still because it's less than 10 tfachim, like we said before, it's considered to be part of the field itself. So over here, in our Mishnah, when it says the comparison of these two things, the ditches and the racks, the comparison is only regarding the area that's less than 10 tfachim. But regarding the area that's more than 10 tfachim or more deep, over here regarding a sale, even if it's not full of water, it's like two separate pieces of a land, and therefore it's not a good sale. Mashenkim and the Mishnah and Erchin, over there, we say that the dimyan, the comparison of the ditches to the racks, goes on both cases, whether it's more than 10 tfachim deep or less than 10 tfachim deep. But it's only here because of the svara that Rav Papa said, so we're being matchik the Mishnah to say that the comparison is only regarding when it's less than 10 tfachim, but if it's more than 10 tfachim, we don't compare it to the slime. Okay, now it said in the Mishnah, Pachis mikan nimdadim mima. If you have these ditches in the field that are, or you have these racks that are in the field, but if it's less than 10 tfachim high of a protrusion, so then it's measured together with the field itself. So the Gemara here qualifies that this is certain cases when and how this applies. Rabbi Yitzchak said, Trashim she'amru. These kind of fields that have in it racks, that they said, the Mishnah here says that this is still considered to be a good sale because it's less than 10 tfachim of a protrusion. When is this? It's only if base arbas kaven. That's only if it's up to the amount of 4 kav. Meaning if you look at all these different protrusions of racks in the field and you combine them together, you'll get an amount of space that's 4 kav or less. That's considered to be an area that's still acceptable, that it's a proper base core offer. But once you have these protrusions of rocks, even if the protrusions are less than 10 tfachim high, but it's an amount that's more, if you combine all these protrusions together, it'll come to be an amount that's more than 4 kav, then that's already something that is not going to be a good sale. Rav Ukva Bar Chama, Rav Ukva Bar Chama says on this, that is b'chamesh kaven. When do I say that when you have this amount of 4 kaven or less, that it's considered to be an area that's still a good sale? That's only if it's spread out in the territory, at least has to be spread out at least in the area of 5 kaven. But if it's not spread out in the area of 5 kaven, if it's closer together than 5 kaven, then we consider all these different rocks that are here in such a small area to be like one large rock. And if it's like one large rock, so then it's not going to be a good sale. It has to be spread out at least in the area of 5 kaven. And if it's spread out even more, so then for sure it's going to be a good sale. Rav Chia Bar Abba, Rav Yechanan, Rav Chia Bar Abba says in the name of Rav Yechanan a different shitta. He argues. He says, "Navuhushim of loin beruba shel sada." It has to be spread out in the majority of the territory of this field. So if we're talking about a base core, which is 30 sa'ah, it has to be spread out at least over the area of the majority, which would be 16 sa'ah out of the 30 sa'ah of this field. Then I say that these rocks, these protrusion of these rocks that are spread around, it'll still be a good field. But if it's closer together, if it's too close together, then it's considered to be like one large rock, and therefore it's not going to be a good sale. Now, based on this, based on what Rabbi Yechanan said, boy, Rabbi Chia Bar Abba asked the Shaila, Ruban bimiyuta. Most of these rocks that you have over here, so you have these rocks that are the amount of 4 kav, most of them are bimiyuta, are in a minority of this area that you said it has to be spread out in, right? So again, it has to be spread out in 16 saw. So most of them are spread out in a minority of this 16 saw. But in miyutan, there is a little bit of it. There's still a little bit of these rocks that are spread out biruba in most of the field of those 16 saw. So it's not really all spread out equally in 16 saw. 16 saw again is most of the field. Most of these rocks are concentrated in a smaller area of the majority of the field. It's concentrated together. But there is still a small part of these 4 kavan of rocks that are spread out in most of in the area of 16 saw. Now, what's going to be the halacha in such a case? So, because on one hand, it is somewhat spread out in most of the field, but on the other hand, most of these rocks though are concentrated in a smaller area of this roiv of the field. So therefore, maybe it should be considered to be like all one rock that's concentrated closer together. Teiku, the Gemara does not answer this question. By Rabbi Yirmiyah, another shaila Rabbi Yirmiyah asks, and the Rashbam or all the Mefarshim say that this shaila here of Rabbi Yirmiyah is according to both opinions that we said before. That again, we spoke before about the fact that if it's too concentrated together, then it's not going to be a good sale. And again, the two opinions here: either it's when it's in an area that's less than again avushim muvlam b'chameshes kavin, that if it's going to be in an area that's less than 5 kavin, then it's too concentrated together, and that's, you can't plant properly, you can't plow properly. Or according to Rabbi Yechanan, if it's not spread out in the majority of the field, it's concentrated closer together, so then it's not going to be a good sale. So based on both of these opinions, Rabbi Yirmiyah asks the following question. Here, the Gemara is going to go through a few different possibilities. You see over here, you follow the pictures in the Rashbam. One question is keshir mahu. What if these rocks are spread out in the field, and it's in the shape of a sheir, which literally means a bracelet, around in a circle. Now the point of this iboy over here is that it is spread out in roiv of the field, or it is spread out in an area that's at least 5 kavan or more. So in that sense, it should qualify to be a good sale based on both shiurim that was said before. But the design of the way it is positioned, the way these rocks are in the field in a circle, because it's in that circle, when you're going with the plow to plow and to plant in the field, it makes it difficult to avoid it. You constantly bump into them. So the shaila is, do I say because it's spread out enough, therefore it's a good sale? Or do I say, but because it's in this circle and it creates a very big difficulty to plow, therefore it's not a good sale? That's one shaila. Another shaila is, it's tadinin mahu. What's if it's spread out in the field like it's tadinin? It's tadinin is like you see here in the picture, in the second picture in the Rashbam, or in the third picture of the Rashbam. Oh, sorry, I skipped one. Sorry, let me go back. I skipped one. That keshura mahu. The Gemara first asked, what's if you have the rocks that are spread out like a straight line? If you have a straight line of rocks across your field, even if it's spread out of most of the field, or even if it's spread out over a big amount of area, but still, because it goes in a straight line across the field, it makes it very difficult to plant there or to plow there. And the Rashbam actually says that this is more difficult than the first case of the circle. The Gemara is saying, if you're going to say that the circle is not a problem, but when you have a straight line of rocks straight across your field, it makes it even more difficult. So maybe here, it would not be a sale. Further, the third shaila the Gemara asks, it's tadinin mahu. What's if the rocks are spread out in the field, but they're spread out in such a way that it's like it's tadinin. It's tadinin is referring to the horns of oxen. And the reason why it's called it's tadinin is because these oxen were used in circuses, in big stadiums, and therefore they got this nickname of it's tadinin, which it's stadion is a stadium. So they have so it's spread out here in the field like the horns of these oxen. As you see here in the third picture of the Rashbam, 2 horns that go through the field. What's going to be the halacha in such a case? Again, over here, the point is that this is spread out in the field. It's very spread out, but yet because it's in this kind of a shape, so it makes it even more difficult to plow than even the previous cases. More difficult than the circle, and even more difficult than having just one line of rocks run across the field. And the third case the Gemara asks is where it's even spread out. It's also very spread out, but it's spread out in a way that it makes it even harder to plant. Akalosin mahu. What's if it's spread out like a zigzag, as you see in the next picture of the Rashbam? So in such a case, maybe even if in the previous cases we're going to say that it doesn't disturb as much for the plowing, but in such a case where it's going zigzag across the field, even if it's spread over a large area, but it makes it very hard to plant, maybe this will not be a good sale. Teiku, the Gemara does not resolve any of these shilas. Tane, in a Braisa we learned, Im hoya sela yechidi, if you have just one rock, afila kolshu, even if it's a small rock, and it's not, before we spoke about a rock that's large and has a protrusion, it's 10 tfachim high, even if it's a small rock that's a very small protrusion, ein nimda dima, it's not measured together with the field. Now we're talking over here about a rock that's not inside the area of the field itself where you plant. It's sort of outside the border of the place where you have to plant, and therefore that rock is not counted together with the field itself. If it's what we spoke about before, the shear that it says in the Mishnah was all if it's something which is in the center of the field. Then I say inside the field itself, there's the shear of, depending how big it is, how high it is, whether it's bottled to the field or not. But over here we're talking about a rock that's on the side. Over here, on the side, if it's not a piece of earth like the field itself, it's not counted together with the field. Now, that's not a chiddush, but here the main chiddush is even if it's a rock, a protrusion that is inside the border of the field itself, but it's very close to the border, it's right by the border of the field, then afila kol shuhu, even if it's a little rock, it's not counted together with the field. Since it's right near the border, so we sort of cut off at that area, it's like already part of the border outside of the field because it's a rock and it's not planted, it's not inside in the center, somewhere inside the field itself. It's not measured together with the field, even if it's a very small rock. By Rav Papa, so based on this brayso, Rav Papa asks, Mufsak ofar bentayim mahu. What's if you have a little bit of earth between this rock and the border? What's going to be the halacha? In other words, we're talking about that there's a separation of earth between the border and this rock less than 3 tfachim. So it's very close to the border, but it's not mamish on the border. In such a case, do I say that it's considered to be like a rock in the center, somewhere in the center of the field, and therefore the shiurim of our Mishnah applies, that it depends how big the rock is? Or do I say that this is still considered to be a rock on the border that's not counted with the measurement of the field itself? Another Ibaye, Ravashi asked the Ibaye, that, and then the Rashbam says, this is all, if you're going to say in the previous case that when you have a little bit of offer between the border and this rock, then it's not considered to be a rock on the border. It's a rock that's already in the field itself. So now the shaila is, if you have afar mulmata vitsunma lamaila, what's if this rock is not such a deep rock? You have the rock here, but then below it there is still earth. Or the opposite, tsumma lamaila, afar mulmaila, that is, if you have earth on the top and tsumma mulmata, but if you dig a little deeper, you'll see that there's really a rock there. Mahu, what's going to be the halacha in such a case where it's not all just a rock, but there's some earth, whether on the top or on the bottom? Is that going to be measured together with the field or not? Teiku, the Gemara does not resolve the sibaya.